Hello, all. Welcome back to Mondays with Monica. I am so excited to be doing this week's video, and I'm so excited about this week's conversation. So, I can't think of any trigger warnings for this week's video. I will be restricting the access to this video to those who are 18 and over. Today's topic is what is a friend? Um, And I hope as I continue on with this conversation, you will understand why I chose to restrict um, the topic. However, if you do wish to share this with someone under the age of 18, please feel free to do so. You know the younger ones in your life way better than I do. And just a side note, how I choose to pick which videos I'm going to restrict for 18 and over or not is I think about the context of the video that I'm going to be doing and if do I want my 13-year-old son to come across this video. So if I feel like if I wouldn't mind my 13-year-old coming across this video, then I will have it for kids and etc. But this one I'm going to kind of go into some crazy in-depth ideas about friendship and what it's meant to me and how I learned what a real friend was. And we're this is my little friend Frosh. You can see him there. That's my little snuggum stats. This is his time to kind of snuggle and stuff on my bed. But anyway, so what is a friend? Um, to me, I called many people my friends. So, um, if we had very few things in common, they were my friend, and I didn't really take into consideration like things like will they be there for me like I would be there for them. Things like that was the biggest thing that I kind of never really took into consideration or really getting to know them. As a child and young adult, was really much like I used to be the kind of person that would kind of like I would like whatever you like just so that we can hang out and do stuff. Like I didn't know who Dominique was or who Monica was. Dominique, I'll say Dominique. I didn't know who Dominique was, so if Jane Doe was like, "Oh, I want to be your friend," guess what? I was gonna be Jane Doe's friend, and like whatever Jane Doe liked, so that we could hang out and do whatever, right? Um, and it wasn't until later in life where I'm just like, these aren't my friends. Um, I didn't like the same things they kind of do. I didn't like the same music, the same movies. I didn't like doing the same kind of activities with them. Um, and it's so interesting because I I used to dance and I used to be able to be on stage and do dance and I used to do talent shows and I used to do open poetry and spoken word rather. I now am a drag performer and I can do all of those roles like performing in front of people really well. However, in my personal life, like I keep my circle kind of small, kind of quiet. Don't like to interact that much with people. And I realized like in my teenage years, I was constantly going and or willing. I was willing to kind of go just and do what everybody else liked, just to make people think that I was cool. Um, and at that time, I sincerely did not know who I was as a person, and I look back at those years of my life and I kind of regret like not knowing who I really was. And sometimes I think back like, what would I have done differently? I do have to give some credit to my mother because my mother knew that I was the kind of person who would be content in my room with a book or with a notebook, pen, paper, music. Like my mom knew that was what I was okay with. But my mom did try to encourage me the best way she could with going out with my peers, like finding out what I liked outside of just being cooped up in my room and being complete. When I say I was comfortable being cooped up in my room, listen, I was comfortable. Oh, I loved it. It was paradise to me. Like y'all couldn't tell me nothing when that was that. So everyone has their own definition of what a friend is and what that means. However, I literally just did a Google search and I typed in define the word friend. And according to the dictionary, a friend is defined as a person whom one knows and with whom one has a bond of mutual affection, typically exclusive of sexual or family relations. Example, she is a friend of mine. Um, so based off of that, I don't have a lot of friends, nor did I ever have a lot of friends. Um, one thing that's always been consistent in my life is I've always known people in my life that like to do things. You know, do I like to go to the movies? Yes. Did those people my age like to go to the movies? Yes. But did we like the same kind of movies? 9 times out of 10, the answer was no. Um, I like to eat, and my peers like to eat. But did we like the same kind of food? Not all the time. Um, but I recall always thinking I like to do these things because if I said I didn't, then what would I look like? Like, who would I be? I would be the odd person out. And I was never comfortable with just being, you know, who I was. And that I think has, now as I look back, has made me sad. But now as an adult, I'm okay. Like, even like doing things with my son. Like, he's 13, almost 13 rather. And I've met a whole bunch of people through activities that my son does, whether it's his sports, whether it's through school, his school. Like, I've met a lot of people because I have a child, not because these are people that I may like. Hey, come over to my house. Let's do coffee or let's do this. It's so like it wasn't until a person who I now call my friend um, was like, Dominic, you have a lot of friends. And I was like, yeah, I guess I do. I have a lot of friends. Then I remember her, after she had said that to me, I'm like, do I have a lot of friends or do I have a lot of associates? Because there's a difference. Like, up until that point, I did not have friends. And I knew a lot of people. And I still do know a lot of people, whether it was through work, whether it was through school, whether it was through the deaf community, whether it was through my son's activities, extracurricular activities, his schooling, the PTO, um, wide range of things. And I remember her and I having a conversation, and we talked about like the term friend is being gets tossed around so loosely, and it's so true. Like, so, and it's like, okay, affection. Like, I have a, a handful of friends that I know that I can count on. Like, if it's if I lost my housing tomorrow, I know I can go crash there for a few days. Oh, I'm running out of food. I know I can call a couple people and say, hey, I am really tight on food. Like, can you help me? Um, I like there are very few people that I know, no matter who I am as Monica, like they are still going to love me, regardless of what's going on in my life. No matter the stuff that I sincerely like, even if it's vaguely different than like a little bit different than theirs, um, and that's just been really beautiful to kind of like um, appreciate and notice. One thing I've also come to appreciate is about how I decided who my friends are and deciding what a friend is being able to have open and honest conversations with your friends. Um, being able to say, hey, you know what, John Doe, what you did, I didn't necessarily care for that, and this is how I was affected. And them saying, you know what, I can see how you were affected in that way, and changing their behavior, you know, um, and respecting your boundaries. I found that to be something that was really important for me is being able to have my boundaries respected, but also being able to respect my friends' boundaries. And that's something that one really good friend kind of taught me and saying. And now her and I, whenever we talk, I say, "Oh yeah, my friend." Wait, never mind. And a person I know, or I say an associate, because 9 times out of 10 they're not my friend. Like I don't talk to them on a regular basis. Like I know them because they are some of those reasons I stated before, but not they're not like my ride or die, my home skillet, my friend. Like they're not. It's just I know them because our paths crossed some like at one point in time. And I'm at a point now where I'm struggling with a friendship that I've had for quite some time, and literally I had to have a conversation with this individual and just say, hey, I'm noticing some things that are making me uncomfortable, and we need to be able to work this out, or we need to cut this friendship off. Like, and that's where we are in this relationship. And it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, um, and this is still like really new. Like we're trying to figure out what is kind of off in our like my friendship right now. Maybe it could be just a simple lack of communication, a misunderstanding, but who knows? But gotta try to work it out, and that brings me back to the being able to have uncomfortable conversations with your friends, because your real friends are gonna be okay with having those uncomfortable conversations, because they wanna, if they sincerely care about you and they sincerely appreciate you as a person and they value your friendship, they are going to take the time to want to listen to you. Like, they're going to want to talk it out. Like, oh, okay, I see how it is. You know what? This is how we can compromise or work through some things. I think I mentioned this before. Boundaries are a very, very important thing to have, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with family members, whether it's with your children, your coworkers, etc. Boundaries are beyond important, and over the last year and a half, I've sincerely been able to um, and then also establishing boundaries for myself. Like, no, you can't do that with or around me. You can't say that to me. You better try Jesus, but you but don't. I'm not the one, the two, nor the three. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm starting to appreciate what my boundaries are, and even though it's uncomfortable to communicate your boundaries, it's extremely important to be able to do so. And of course, we're talking about this like in terms of friends, but like your boundaries are your boundaries, and no one has the right to tell you that your boundaries are off, even if it like, especially if it's a friend. Like, if your friend sincerely loves and cares about you, excuse me, they're gonna want to know like how to resolve any issues that come up. Um, and that's something I sincerely appreciate. One of my one friend, we'll call her Tiffany. She um she cracks me up. I tell her all the time that I think she's one of the funniest people on this earth, and she doesn't try to be funny. She's just authentically funny. And Tiffany and I, we talk like on the phone every other day. Like, we laugh. Like, she cracks me up to the umpteenth degree. Like, and I was actually talking to her last week, and yeah. I said, not too many people can hurt me. Um, I said, but I will be hurt by you. Um, and I said, I would be hurt by you because I care a lot about you, you know? And that was my first time I think I had ever expressed that to her. Not that she's ever hurt me, like, in the time that we've known each other, but like, I can see myself because I'm so invested in her as a person. I'm so invested in her as my friend. I want the best for her and her household on a regular basis. Um, and she's a really good example to myself about expressing and stating her boundaries, even when it comes to me or whenever she tells me stories that's happening in her day to day life. Um, and I find that really remarkable. And she serves as a constant reminder of the kind of friend I hope to always be to her, but also to my other friends. And I laugh and I chuckle, and I tell her like, "Yo, you are so dope, and I appreciate you all the time." And one thing that came up was, I'm not a person that says I love you a lot. Like, I'm just not. I don't say I love you to people. Like, I say I love you to my son and like to my mother, and my siblings. But like, I don't tell like. And I had told Tiffany the other last week, and I'm like, Tiffany, you will never hear me say I love you. And she was like, Monica, what if something happened to me tomorrow and I never knew you loved me? I said, but I care about you a lot. Like, And it cracked me up because I'm just not a person that says I love you often. Um, she made me laugh because it's so true. Um, One thing I've really come to appreciate was that I have a lot of associates, and I'm okay with how these associates work in my life. Like that's okay. Um, to have associates and to know a lot of people, but not everybody is your friend. Over the last 2 years, I've had to let go of two friends that, well, two people who were friends with me for a while that I didn't think I would stop being their friends. But then I realized, like, hey, I don't like the way you move. And how you move and how you do things burn me out. And I can no longer do this. It's like having those conversations were really hard. Um, and it made me think because I had heard this quote one time that said something to the effect of grief um, grief can still happen even when the person is still living. And I thought that was a powerful quote that I had read because it's so true. Like, in reality, the person's not deceased. It's not, they're, but like, you can still grieve a relationship that you had to end. And I have grieved those, the endings of those relationships. But I also have had a crazy amount of peace, like, in my life in terms of those relationships ending, and that has been such a blessing in disguise. Like I didn't think that I would get to a point where I can just be like, oh, okay. And don't get me wrong, these two individuals, I still think of them on a regular basis. I, send positive vibes out their way. And who knows, maybe our paths will cross again at one point in time. And I really do hope and wish them the best all the time. And for me, like, I think about my life and the kind of person that I was growing up, and even though there were a few friends that I would really call them my, you know, I don't know if I would really call them my friends, but there was a couple of young individuals who I would hang out on a regular basis, and um, I don't know if I don't think I was good friends to them, and I say that because I never let myself be myself. Like I was never okay with being just who I was. So I was on a regular basis like, I'll like whatever you like as long as that's gonna make you want to hang out with me. So that trait and that line of thinking and that behavior that I exhibited essentially made me a toxic individual or a not so great friend to them. You know, that's not how friendship works. It's okay to have things that are different because you're two different people, and like that's completely okay. And now I can appreciate that. Like I've talked to Tiffany because Tiffany, and two other friends, we get together once a month, and we hang out. And a couple months ago, a topic came up, um, and I remember like after we hung out a couple days later, I was like, Tiffany, I said, this is my point of view on that topic that happened, but I don't know how, I didn't know how to say it. And then we laughed, and and I said, now I feel comfortable saying it. I said, but Tiffany is definitely my sounding board. Like when I be thinking off, I always say is, hey Tiffany, you got a couple spoons? Like, do you have the mental energy for X, Y, or Z? And if she says yes, then there it goes with the verbal diarrhea of like whatever situations I'm going through. Or and having a friend like that, she is my most trusted and valued friend, and I love her to pieces. Um, so I crack up and I tickle all the time because um, she's really good at like playing devil's advocate, and I see her as like being well put together, like play devil advocate very well, very like self aware, and I love it. And like cares about other people's feelings, like cares about other people. And when she communicates, she has her words seasoned with salt. And I sit there and I laugh because her and I are really good friends. But I'm not like that. Like I don't season my words with salt too often. Like I really don't. It just like comes out and I'm like, ooh, that was bad. I'm sorry. And sometimes I don't say sorry and I'd be like, ooh, I need to work on like stopping and thinking before I speak. Um, and it's such a lovely like thing. So, what is a friend to you? Like, comment below. What is a friend to you? Have you had to, like, in relationships that were no longer good, like friendships? What made you in those friendships? Were you ever the toxic friend in somebody's life? Like, did people ever come to you and say, hey, what you're doing is something that I don't like? And how did you respond in those situations? Did you feel like they were attacking you? And I know that at points I felt like people were attacking me, and I'm just like, I don't know who you think you're talking to because I'm dope. I'm all that in a bag of chips. And that's okay. And I think we as individuals have to eventually become comfortable with people not being okay with our traits, you know? And one thing that I recently learned is I knew someone who on a regular basis would say, I can't change. And I remember thinking like, and I kind of applied it to myself like, is it, do you not want, can you not change, or you don't want to change? Like, I can tell you there's things about people that they cannot change, like permanently change. Like I'm 5'2". I will that's I can't change that. I can't change who my parents are. I can't really, like, this is the nose I was born with. Like, my eyebrows are thin. I can't change that I'm black. I can't change where I was born. Like, I can't I there's things that we like really can't change about ourselves. Like, there's things that we really can't. However, when it comes to behavior, we can change our behavior. We can change our train of thoughts. We can do a lot of those things. So if someone is constantly saying, "Hey," not maybe it's not just one person, but if multiple people are saying the same thing about you to you, and you're noticing a lot of problems in your relationship, sometimes we have to take a step back. Like, is it me? Like, are we the common denominator? And there was at one point in time where I found that people weren't saying things directly to me, but their responses to me were the same. And that's how I knew that I was the common denominator. So that means I, as Monica, had to make some changes. Because if I wasn't making no changes, I was going to constantly be the toxic individual in people's lives. And that's not something I wanted to be. Nor do I want to be that. Um, and I know that I want to be the best version of myself for me, and I want to be the best example I can be for my son. And when we talk to kids, I remember when my son was little, we would go to the park or we would do whatever, and kids at parks they end up playing with people, and he'll come over, Ma, I that's my best friend, or that's my friend. What is that person's name? I don't know. So we teach kids that not everybody is your friend, right? But do we ever have the conversation of like, okay, well, to us, this is what makes a good friend, you know? Or even in schools, I think schools sometimes do that. Like, I've done work in education in the past, and when it comes to younger kids, we don't do that to our friend. Like, we don't hit our friend, or we don't take the toys out of our friend's hand. And that's also implying that everybody is your friend when not everybody is your friend, honey. You know? Um, there's principles that we just don't do to people. Like, you can't be talking to people any kind of way you want to because that's not nice. No, you don't go around slapping people because that's not nice. You don't go around snatching stuff out of people's hands because that's not nice. But how often do we sit and talk about, like, what is a good friend to our children? Like, and we, I've heard situations from, like, generations above me saying, like, show me who your friends are, not show who you are. And for me, it took a long time to understand that. I never really fully understood that until I became an adult, and I realized, I'm like, oh, similar saying is like, you are what you eat. Your, people's behaviors and actions and stuff can definitely rub off on you. And I remember this one scripture, 1 Corinthians 15:33, that says, "Bad association spoils useful habits." Um, and that's my favorite scripture that I memorized years and years ago, and I'll never forget that because if you have good habits you're trying to do, or you're trying to lead the best life you can be, don't be hanging around with people who ain't got the same mindset as you. That's essentially what that scripture is saying. Like, who do you think you are? 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad association spoils useful habits. And that's something I think about all the time, and it's definitely changed my group of friends drastically. Not so much back in the day when I had remembered that scripture or memorized that scripture, but it definitely affects who I have in my life now as friends. And I'm a part of a 4 friend group right now, and all four of us are leveling up in some kind of way. And I absolutely love it. Like, we laugh, we tuckle, we have a grand old time every time we get together. Um, yeah, and that's such a. I'm so grateful with who I am and who I can call my friend now as a 31-year-old individual versus who I was calling my friend, who I was calling my friend 5 years ago. So, in the words of my friend Tiffany, tell people you love them if they are your friends. Evaluate who your friends are. Like, what kind of people do you need in your life? Um, I remember there was a Tyler Perry play, and my friend Tiffany and I, we kind of bring this up all the time. It's one of my favorite clips. You can find it on YouTube. Um, and Tyler Perry in the play, he was playing Medea, but you can tell this part was kind of like off scripted. Um, and he referred to people in your life like, um, you know, either the leaves on the tree, the branch on the tree, or the roots of a tree. And essentially, what he was saying was, the leaves, they come and go. They every season they stay for a season, they die and fall. They blow one way, the wind blows another way. They're wishy washy. Those are wishy washy friends. And then, you know, the branch friends, they're a little bit stronger than the leaves, but you put too much weight on them, they're gonna crack too. And then he pretty much wraps it up with saying, like, the roots, get you some friends that are roots because they're underground, they're strong, they're sturdy, and essentially those roots are holding up this massive, beautiful tree. So get you a few roots. Try to find that clip on YouTube. I love that. I love that illustration for who friends are, what friends are. And that pretty much wraps up this conversation. I hope you were able to get something out of that, got you thinking a little bit like, what is a friend to you? Who are your friends? What kind of friend are you? Like, think about that. What kind of friend are you? And that's something I still think about on a regular basis. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning into this week's Mondays with Monica, where we have uncomfortable conversations that make life a little bit more comfortable. And join us next week. And the topic for next week is going to be the topic of about forgiving and forgetting and who that benefits. Okay? Talk to you next week. Have a good night.